Breaking the sacred vaccine injury information embargo, Australia's news.com ran an informative story Wednesday headlined, Dr. Corrine Phelps reveals devastating COVID vaccine injury, says doctors have been censored. This follows up on the heels of her explosive testimony in the Australia Parliament's inquiry into long COVID this past week. To date, Dr. Corrine Phelps has become the highest official in Australia yet to criticize the mRNA treatments. For the record, Dr. Phelps is the former head of the Australian Medical Association. She has been an independent member of Parliament, and she was a prominent pro-vaxx advocate from the get-go. This past week, Phelps testified that both she and her wife have suffered serious, continuing injuries from COVID shots. She also said she thinks the real rate of adverse events is much, much higher than has been admitted, thanks to underreporting and threats from medical regulators. Naysayers, not your typical flat earther anti-vaxxer, huh? I'm willing to bet she and her wife also believe in climate change and lean left on issues. Dr. Phelps went on to say that, as a medical professional, she asked about any potential adverse side effects of the COVID shot before she took it, but she was not properly informed. We did a lot of homework before having the vaccine, particularly about choice of vaccine at the time. In asking about adverse side effects, we were told that the worst thing that could happen would be anaphylaxis, and the severe reactions such as myocarditis and pericarditis were rare. Now, proponents of the pharmaceutical cocktails, you'll be happy to learn that she didn't have any allergic reactions or myocarditis. No, according to Dr. Phelps, it was much worse than that. Dr. Phelps explained that her partner Jackie was severely injured almost immediately after taking the first injection. Jackie suffered a severe neurological reaction to her first Pfizer vaccine within minutes, including burning face and gums, paresthesia, and numb hands and feet while under observation by myself, another doctor, and a registered nurse at the time of immunization, the 65-year-old went on to say. I continue to observe the devastating effects a year and a half later with the addition of fatigue and additional neurological symptoms, including nerve pains, altered sense of smell, visual disturbance, and musculoskeletal inflammation. The diagnosis and causation have been confirmed by several specialists who have told me that they have seen a lot of patients in a similar situation. Looks like Jackie wasn't the only one who won the AR Olympics. Phelps also had a severe adverse reaction, making the Phelps family 100% vaccine injured. In my case, the injury resulted in dysautonomia with intermittent fevers and cardiovascular implications, including breathlessness, inappropriate sinus tachycardia, and blood pressure fluctuations, she explained. The AMA's former chief testified that her family isn't alone among healthcare professionals, but none of them will talk about it because there has been a kind of official pact to silence everybody enforced by government officials threatening their medical licenses. Dr. Phelps spoke with other doctors who have themselves experienced a serious and persistent adverse event. But that vaccine injury is a subject that few in the medical profession have wanted to talk about, she said. Regulators of the medical profession have censored public discussion about adverse events following immunization, with threats to doctors not to make any public statements about anything that might undermine the government's vaccine rollout or risk suspension or loss of their registration, she said. Well, is she right? Well, it certainly looks like that, since way back in March of 2021, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Agency, AHPRA, published a statement warning that any promotion of anti-vaccination statements or health advice which contradicts the best available scientific evidence or seeks to actively undermine the national immunization campaign, including via social media, is not supported by national boards and may be in breach of the codes of conduct and subject to investigation and possible regulatory action. Now, I'm not an English major, but sounds to me like you're free to say what you want, but if it isn't along the lines of what we say it is, then you're shit out of luck, or something like that. Dr. Phelps testified that after reviewing the literature, she thinks the rate of vaccine injury could be very high indeed. Considering that the majority of Australian adults have now had at least one booster, this suggests that the incidence of serious adverse reactions per vaccinated person could be more than 1 in 1,000. If she's correct, that's devastating. With all the talk of long COVID, she went on to say that there may be some connection to vaccine injuries. It is possible that there is at least some shared pathophysiology between vaccine injury and long COVID, possibly due to the effects of spike protein. In response, the AHPRA has issued a statement clarifying its position and denying that its March 2021 statement had censored anybody. That's just conspiracy chatter circulated by all those ultra right-wing Christians like Dr. Phelps and her wife. The AHPRA been clear in all our guidance about COVID-19 vaccinations that we expect medical practitioners to use their professional judgment and the best available evidence in their practice. This includes keeping up to date with public health advice from Commonwealth, state, and territory authorities. Legitimate discussion and debate based on science is appropriate and necessary to progress our understanding and knowledge. The March 9, 2021 statement does not prevent practitioners from having these discussions. You mean Australians were just imagining they couldn't have these discussions all this time? Well, shame on them. Thank goodness that the AHPRA has now officially clarified that Australians are encouraged to both ask questions and have vaccine hesitancy. How progressive of them. Note, 2 important things this story illustrates about the disappearing vaccine injury news embargo. First, Phelps' testimony in a long COVID committee could have easily been swept under the rug. A surefire guarantee a year ago, but instead it got prominent coverage in Australian news. As a side note, how much did the acquisition of Twitter by Elon play into stories like this crossing the information firewall? Second, and in my opinion, more significant, Phelps, like her other colleagues, such as Dr. Malhotra, obviously now feel confident enough to go public about her concerns. Plus, adding to her credibility is the fact that once again, Dr. Phelps is clearly no conservative activist. She's married to a woman and was a vax champion for much of the pandemic. Something changed. What could it be that changed her mind about talking? Likely the fact that it hit home. That's what it did for Dr. Malhotra. He didn't start questioning things until he lost his father to a sudden and unexpected heart attack. Personally, I wish she had mustered up the courage to speak much sooner, thereby becoming a cautionary tale to others in her country. But, you know, folks, better late than never. As we close out 2022, the tide is turning. Just think back to where we were last year this time. The narrative keepers are losing the fight one day at a time. The News.com article is surprisingly long and detailed and includes a lot of Dr. Phelps' testimony. So, well worth a read and sharing with anyone who's ideologically aligned with pre-vaccine injury Dr. Phelps. Anyway, thanks for watching. I do appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. If you haven't checked out some of my other videos, feel free to check them out. As always, I welcome your comments, thoughts, and input, and I will see you next time.